Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast, live from a very unexpected location, but probably the coolest location we've recorded from so far, at the John Lewis store in the Blue Water Shopping Centre in Dartford in the Greater London area. I'm glad I said this right. By the way, if you're listening to this episode, you can also watch it on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, good to see you. And we're going to talk today about the great innovation that's happened in this department store, which I'm very excited to be sharing with our two illustrious guests today. On one side, we have Georgia Riley from the John Lewis Partnership, and on the other side, we have James Hay from Barrows Connected Store. How are you guys?
Good.
Very well.
Had you ever recorded a podcast?
Not in this way, but I've never had anything so exciting to talk about, so good.
James?
Not for me either. No, a TV ad. I was in a Purse Lab when I was 11 with Frank Bruno, if that's of any particular use.
Very cool.
This could be quite niche for Daniel, perhaps.
I think, yeah, since I'm not British, I sometimes do some of these cultural references. But I have to say, I've done over 280 podcasts. First time I recorded in a store, and first time I recorded this time at night.
Yeah, sorry.
Because of course we're recording when the store is closed. It is Christmas season. By the time this comes out, it will already be after Christmas season. But it's a great experience. So thanks, John Lewis, for setting this up. It's really cool. First of all, can you tell me a bit about your roles in your company?
So I am an in-store retail media strategy and development manager, which basically means that part of my role is looking at what is the retail media we have live in store. What purpose is it serving? Is it actually inspiring for suppliers? Is it engaging for customers? What should we be doing more of? And perhaps often what should we be taking away as well?
Renovating a store, as we talk about now, it's not only about adding new stuff, but it's also about making some painful decisions maybe, of things that have been done for a long time and then have to be changed.
Absolutely. Especially retail media has just exploded recently. And I think there's this real thing about who can be the biggest innovator, who can do the coolest stuff, who can push the boundaries further. And that sometimes leads you to doing some terrible things. So I think there's this real thing of being actually, how do you stay cool and calm, and how do you do stuff which is really right for your brand and for your suppliers, not just because you went to a conference and someone was doing something really cool and you're like, brilliant, we'll do that in our store. And that's actually really why we ended up working with Barrows Connected. And I'll let James will talk about that in a moment, but I think there's also an element of partnering with the right vendors and the right people in the industry who can also keep you level-headed, but also guide you in the right way of what is right for you and your brand.
Totally. Yeah, you can't do everything in-house. It's choosing the right partners is super important in business and in life, I think. James, what is your role at Barrows Connected Store?
My role is I'm the Global Manager Director for Barrows Connected Store, and ultimately what that means is I'm leading our team across the UK, US, also our multimedia capability in South Africa. And really our primary focus is on the strategy and execution against that plan. As Georgia mentioned, in-store retail media, in particular digital, is absolutely kind of exploding, and really we're trying to work out the best way to deliver what we're really good at in this market that's moving so quickly. But ultimately, most importantly, it's about me leading our partnerships with our selected retail partners, and again, hugely proud of the work we've been doing with John Lewis Partnership, and particularly to be in this store tonight and showcasing the brilliant execution we've done here.
And what does Barrows Connected Store actually do as a business?
We are a retail design, media, technology company, and ultimately what we work to deliver is how can we help our retail partners deliver the best possible in-store digital retail media programs? How can we blend the best of digitalization, but also doing it in a way that really connects with their existing shoppers? There's no kind of compromise on the customer experience, but finding a way to then design beautiful imagery that's really attractive to brands. And really that's the hard part, is trying to design all of that in a way that feels both the best possible outcome for the retailer, the shopper naturally, but also finding ways of obviously giving brands an opportunity to really represent themselves in the way that they want to. And we're hugely excited. I think these these amazing environments that we're in tonight and today, I think these are real playgrounds in many ways for brands to come alive, and I think we feel very privileged to play a part in helping making that kind of a reality.
Yeah, also department stores have something very special to them, in the way that they're very different categories, it's a big space, it's an interesting journey. speaking of department stores, let's talk about John Lewis, where we're sitting inside one. What would you say the concept of the John Lewis brand is about?
It's British to the core. So it's more about kind of really thinking about British heritage and thinking about how do we serve a very unique, loyal and excitable audience with a kind of that heritage element of actually it's a safe space. You know you're going to come in, you know what you're going to get, you know you're going to get great quality, you know that you can come in the special life moments. And we find quite a lot of our customers will come in at life moments, and our job is also then keep them in the other moments. So for an example, you might have someone who does their wedding list at John Lewis, and that's sort of the first time they've really started doing stuff. They then actually go on to have their first baby, and then they come in and they're suddenly buying a cot, and then they're suddenly buying university stuff, and then they're buying an outfit for a wedding or things like that. So you can really track through people's purchasing behaviour where they are in a life cycle, and they're kind of trying to do these big moments with John Lewis. So it's quite iconic in those elements. And you'll see those stuff. I mean, Gavin and Stacey Christmas special, which probably is, again, a bit niche for you, but it's kind of that thing of where do you go at Christmas to buy your presents? Where do you do your wedding lists? But what I'd also really say for John Lewis at the moment is this whole idea about being radically relevant and really thinking about actually what are the other moments we need to be showing up for. Actually, it's those beautiful moments when you want to be getting some lovely new makeup. It might be a case that you want to do a whole reshuffle of your wardrobe, or it might just be that you want to get some great Christmas decoration. So where are the other elements we're showing up with? And that's where we have our kind of always on ideas around never knowingly undersold. So it's actually, we're great for the customer because we're not just a big premium department store that those big life moments. We're there every single day, and we're really fighting for value and quality.
It's like understanding the British consumer.
Yeah.
Not only like when they get married and so on, which yes, but also like what are their needs in terms of cosmetics, like what's relevant, as you said, no?
Yeah.
I imagine. Is there any like personal stories you have with John Lewis, or any like memories that you have when you were kids? Because I guess it's the kind of brand that you grew up with, no, here?
When my first child was born, I vividly remember going to John Lewis and literally being like, right, please can someone help me work out what on earth I need to do, what I need to get. And it was literally that, it was a design, literally everyone I spoke to was like, go to John Lewis, they'll sort you out. Also, they give you the best possible advice. But it's very nostalgic. I think it's incredibly trusted. I know these things sometimes are words that are said, but actually the role they play in the psyche of a shopper is, incredibly important. And I think even, moments like, with obviously, weekend of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, but actually just seeing the vibrancy of the store today, I think you get a real feel for the role that the stores play in helping people find inspiration. Incredibly well curated range of products, well trusted, represent good value. And it's about, I think there's moments in time throughout your year or even your life, as you say, that bring to life. But yeah, my early, trying to navigate early days of my little one was brilliant.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really good points there about the feeling when you walk into a store. And I think one of the things that John Lewis is really moving forward with is actually come and spend the whole day with us. Don't just come in for those inspirational moments. Actually come. So you'll notice we have some of the most beautiful places to eat, especially if you go to Peter Jones. It's got one of the best views of London. We have champagne bars topping up. We can come and have an ear piercing. You can come and do some personal styling. You can go for a baby service. You can also have your makeup done. We're starting to work with Treatwell. So if you want to come and get a facial. So the whole point is actually come and spend an entire day with us and pick up bits for shopping when you go along the way. But it's actually how do we fit into your entire lifestyle? And I think that's a bit of an evolution of the store. So it's not just a department store. It's a day out. It's a lifestyle choice.
Interesting. And obviously when I came into Blue Water today and into this store, I saw like these big screens. Well, more than big screens, like beautiful screens, I would say, that you walk in. There's one that's very big, but you also have some smaller ones that are like truly make an impact, right? Why did you choose the Blue Water store for this? Yeah,
Blue Water's an interesting store. So geographically, you probably go, oh, you should probably do it in one of your big flagship stores. Blue Water actually annually has a higher footfall than Oxford Street. And I think that's the thing about the John Lewis estate. Lots of people just think Oxford Street, Peter Jones, but we have about 34 stores and all of them are doing something really quite cool, and they're all serving a different purpose locally. So Blue Water, high traffic, footfall, but also we've just invested £8 million into this store. And that's a real kind of look to the future of what we're doing. There's a big refresh, a bit of a facelift going on. And that plays into that piece I just said around come and spend the day with us. These are lovely spaces. They sort of feel premium. There's lots going on. There's lots of different activities you can tap in throughout the day. So Blue Water is one of our leading stores now in terms of our new look and feel. And they gave us a really good opportunity to try new things as well because we're doing a whole big refurb. So now we have a 7-meter floating screen in the middle of our atrium.
Which by the way, I will put some links in the show notes so that people can actually check it out. We'll put some content out on Instagram, so we'll add the links. So when people are listening to this, they can also check it as they're listening.
Brilliant. And I'll let James talk about the technicalities and things of it. But I think one of the big things is we sat down with Barrows and said, look, what we're trying to do is think about not just standard digital sign. We have so many screens in store. We don't need more screens. What we need is more purpose. So if you start thinking about the retail media screens that we've just involved, we have screens which are all around driving conversion, which are beautiful pillar screens, which are really immersive. They're front to back of pillars. They're up and down as you go through escalators. They really follow you through the store, driving that conversion. You have our beautiful windows, which are sort of kind of first to market. I think not many retailers would digitalize their front windows and hand them over to brands to come and showcase their product. So there's a huge amount of brand awareness in there as well. So talking about come into the store, look at the other stuff you might not know we've got. And then we've got that really cinematic moment with the big atrium screen. And that's about allowing brands to come and play their above the line content in store. So you've got this kind of moment where you've got these brands who are creating these beautiful TV ads. But then how does that really fit into the retail landscape? Well, actually, we've got these sort of cinematic-esque screens where you can play some really cool brand life stories out on.
It's like continuing a bit the interaction that people have on their TV and probably mostly on their mobile screens.
Yeah.
And then they find like the same kind of experience in store, no? And it's a point,
Absolutely, yeah. And I think one of the great things about working with Barrows Connected Store is we could have those conversations really around actually what are the different people doing in the different elements of the store. So for instance, the cinematic screen, our big screen in the atrium, that has quite a high dwell time, and actually people are walking around the store several times. So you have that time to have calmness and play out something quite cool and different. Whereas with you've got pillar screen and entrance, it's quite quick. It's 30% off Le Creuset to this weekend, that kind of idea. So I think that's where we're leaning with you guys very much to be like, actually, this is where sort of our creative expertise can come in as well, saying this bit of content can be 10 seconds, that one needs to be 4 seconds, and we can really build our media portfolio around that.
And for you guys at Barrows Connected Store, why have you decided to go all in terms of like screens and bit with something that's specific to you guys, which is not screens for the sake of screens, but screens that like really like expand that retail brand to another level? Like why do you think that this has so much potential?
Yeah, so I think firstly, it may sound a small thing, but we try not to use the word screens to refer to what we build. I mean, clearly they are made up of screens.
So how do you call them?
We call them touchpoints. And I know it sounds a small distinction, but for us it's really important. I mean, George has touched on it. You know, we think about a couple of things. We try and think about, and again, we did this exercise in this store. We really mapped the customer journey from the moment, you know, you walk into the store, so hence the windows, the kind of that key moments of, you know, high footfall, high impact, you know, where shoppers are really trying to, you know, decompress, but also understand where they're potentially going to navigate around the store. What are they looking for? Is it kind of more mission seeking, or is it maybe a bit more, you know, looking around trying to find? And really, what we're trying to work out is how do we design touch points that feel really relevant or useful in that environment, and designed in a way that doesn't jar, doesn't clash. It's not trying to compete. It's not trying to be noisy. It's just trying to design a way in which you really find kind of the right way of using space. And for us, as a result, what we do is everything's designed bespokely in the context of that shopper journey and that flow. So again, in this environment, you know, we're thrilled with the kind of imagery that's been designed, but also culminating in the cinematic big moment that, you know, Georgia talked about with the atrium, which is, you know, 4 by 7 meters, and it's an incredibly high impact.
And it's very high quality as well. Like
I mean, incredible kind of resolution. But I think the bit for us is about then helping brands as part of that activate in a way that, you know, we all talked about, you know, these are beautiful brands. They've got incredible assets that are crafted, you know, developed over decades. And really what we're trying to create is how do those brands find ways of activating in a way that they're proud of, that represents what they want their brand to be. And we think a bit about like the red line. How do we create a red line between, you know, the assets that are being created and deployed outside of the retail context, and how does that feel kind of connected and coherent? And ultimately shoppers process, you know, masses of information, but really what we're trying to do is create these little shortcuts to the distinctive brand assets and help them be, you know, relevant and triggered at that key moment when we're in the store.
And how did you guys get together to work together? I don't know if you were looking to have more of these like modern touch points, or how did this collaboration come up?
So digital signage in retail media is big. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's trying to work out how to do it. I think there's lots of other companies out there doing things differently, and there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I think it depends on what your model is, what you're trying to achieve, how fast you want to go, how much independence you want within your own design, or whether you just want to sign up someone else's model. So we did a bit of analysis, quite a lot of analysis actually, of what companies are out there that we want to work with, what is that we're trying to achieve. And then also, being John Lewis, we have many teams who want to build into it. So for us, it's not just we are a retail media team, we know there's an opportunity, we're going to put some screens in. You need to think about, right, well, our visual merchandising team, they've got incredible aspirations for the future. How are we going to align into their world? You have our trade teams who are doing these really cool contracts with Barbour. We've got exclusivities going on.
I saw those jackets.
Yeah, they're very cool. And you've got some really cool new brands launching just with us. And you've got like Trini London, really cool sort of first to market stuff. So how does that play into what we're doing as well? So you kind of think about who is the right vendor partner, which is sort of what I guess you guys can call yourselves, I suppose, that can really, understand us as a business, understand that we are not just a silo team. There are lots of opinions, there's lots of goals. And then also think about who can really truly understand what it is we're trying to do in store, but without overcomplicating it. Because when you almost go to a company and say, we want to do something quite premium, we want it to be really unique to us, what you don't want is a company to go, here are hundreds of different ideas, because it's really overwhelming.
Well, that's why you go to an expert, no? Because then you get like somebody that's done it before, has done it for, and I guess you see like a pattern of what good looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that was the thing that we sort of interviewed lots of people, and I think it's about 2 years we were sort of really talking, getting nitty gritty about sort of what is we're after. And actually I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably an element for you guys as well of being, absolutely, do we want to work with John Lewis?
Well, no, in a way that I think we're quite discerning on anyone we work with, and I say that because these are like multi-year programs and partnerships, and actually one of the things that we've always fundamentally believed in is is the retail partner invested in this for the right reasons? Is this really about creating enduring value for shopper and the brand partners, as opposed to you hear lots of people talk about monetizing, and I think that language is quite important, because actually it signals really about is the strategic or tactical. And I think so we were pretty discerning about who we worked with before. So the chemistry felt really positive. It's about how do we could see that this is about a retailer that was you can see has got incredible momentum and confidence, and I think that's also a great sign for us that this is clearly been an important retail, or the partnerships can be an important retail set of retailers for brands long term, and I think that's also important for us. Like how do we help craft that and work in that partnership is really important. So yeah, we feel we've really enjoyed it. There's a great company called The Magic Source. There's a guy called James Hayhurst. I promise that's not a play on my name.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah. And he's an amazing guy, worth looking at anyway. But one of the things that he always talks about is great work doesn't come from average relationships, and it's a sentiment that we take really seriously. Actually, when you really believe that the partnership can be very honest, transparent, but based on aligned principles and values, and obviously naturally you have to work well together. But if you get that right, then actually it's not a straightforward journey. There are difficult parts of this is substantial investment, but ultimately we believe if you get that right, then the potential is really,
and that's
really
why you
profound.
need to invest so much time in the beginning to, as you said, getting to know who you're going to work with.
Yeah.
It's a bit like an interview process, right? They always say to hire for culture fit, but I think when you're going to partner with someone and you've been in the business for long enough, you know that there's like stages in the relationship in which there'll be like challenging moments, and to build that relationship and feel like, okay, these people I can work with is super, not just like who can I make money from or whatever. It's like who can I actually, as you said, create a joint value proposition with.
Totally. And I think for us what's really important is we're not setting out to create the biggest network. That's really not our goal. What we want to build is the most valuable retail media networks for our partners, and that's really what drives us. So it's not about having lots and lots of partners. It's about finding the best ones and building something really brilliant, like industry leading or in their vertical, that the top of the industry. So again, we've been really pleased, delighted with the progress, but I think also the spirit of innovation. Sometimes it's a bit bold. We talked about the big atrium screen around the corner. This is when we first showcased the idea. We know it's going to be provocative. We know it's going to be, potentially some people are going to absolutely love it. It might,
What did you think at first?
When we first saw the first few prototypes, there was an element of, oh my God, what have I done? Because you're going to have to go to the, Peter Ruiz, MD of John Lewis, and go, do you like my screen?
Touchpoint.
Touchpoint, sorry. So I think it is big, but I think the interesting thing is, what I was really not just surprised by, but just how excited everyone at John Lewis were by the innovation and driving it and doing something bold and different, which I think shows a lot about where our direction is in the future. But I think also helps, I think working with Barrows Connected Store is you guys came with a huge amount of expertise of being like, well, and going into that sort of that partnership, the idea of trust, of hands up, we haven't done something like this before. These are where we think it's going to get sticky. This is where I think we can overcome it. You can just go into that in the business as well. So it's almost like we all sign up to the pains together from a really senior level all the way down to sort of...
Was there a bit of like a challenge of like, oof, this is the formula that's worked for a long, long time, and now we're going to like really make some bold changes? I guess it must be an interesting one, that you had to partner with to come up with the case of like, look, we know it's going to change, but that's the change that the company need. And now I guess coming into the store now, it looks very natural, but I guess it was a challenge in some way, no? Like,
yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think this is what many companies are going to go for us, it's not just us, is you can build something really beautiful and really cool. If a supplier or brands don't buy into it, you're just left with some big, beautiful touch points. And so I think our journey now is to be like, how do we talk to the likes of Barbour, Trinity London, or home brands, and think about actually, this is what we've got, come and use it. And I think that's probably our next bit of a journey as well. And I think there's been quite a clear message from the business of being like, this is all really cool, but you guys need to make it sustainable. So I think, and anyone building a retail media network will say the same of, I don't think there's anyone I've ever met who said the first few months are easy, because it's like launching any product, whether you're launching a new IT system or whatever. Getting something off the ground, doesn't matter how shiny it is always going to be a bit of a bumpy one.
A bit scary as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the biggest thing I think. I think the business know that digital signage is big. They know retail media is big. I think it's just for us to prove that how we're going to do it for John Lewis is the right way of doing it.
Yeah, fortune favors the bold, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit along these lines. When you looked at this project, how did, or looking at the results even, how did you make it like, I don't know if uniquely or specifically success, like thinking how are we going to make this successful for John Lewis? Were there any particularities?
Yeah, so I think firstly, George just touched on a little bit, but the understanding the audience and the shopper base is incredibly important. This is a very famous, precious British brand. You have to treat it with the appropriate care and attention, but also understanding its position in the market. It's a kind of, the audience is not exclusively, but it's a kind of slightly older, slightly more affluent demographic. But I think what's really important is understanding how do you develop solutions that are going to really work without in any level of compromise. In fact, you're looking for improvement, not discrimination. And even talking to the store manager today, it's amazing how a lot of the kind of verbatims are around, feels like the store's been modernised, this feels like an elevation of, they may not always explicitly reference the touch points, but it's often reference to, this feels a bit more, feels a bit lighter or different. So I think we wanted to be really sensitive to that audience, making sure that we were very respectful. But I also wanted, I think we really wanted to bring the sense of the modern dynamism that you can see and the confidence in the brand. So how could we also find ways of bringing things that felt brave and punchy, and try and find the right balance between imagery that was well considered, and some, again, Atrium's an obvious example, but it felt like they could really punch and they could create real disruption. And again, you just look at the announcements or the coverage from the launch, you get a real sense that actually it felt perhaps a bit unexpected, and I think that's really caught the attention, and the supplier feedback's been really positive in the same way. So I think it's about trying to find the right balance of being respectful, but then also helping drive an innovation agenda and trying to find the sweet spots.
And I think there's something interesting that you said, and it's true that this is a store for relatively affluent people. I mean, there's nice brands that have a certain cost. Like, this is not a value retailer. This is like a retailer where people go for the experience, and I think ultimately the quality of the products. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that needs to really reflect on what we're trying to do from a retail media perspective. We talked about it before in terms of scale. We're never going to have the huge scale of a Superdrug. We don't want to be a Superdrug, but we've got 34 stores. And so actually thinking about how do we really lean into that premiumization, that differentiation, and so really think about we own the spaces, and we've got some really cool things we can do within it. So that's kind of where our niche, I think.
Yeah, and it's also like where a lot of brands want to start to be popular, and where the trendsetters are in places like this, no?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. And again, we spent quite a bit of time talking to brands as part of the discovery process anyway. A lot of the description coming back was that John Lewis is really a brand beacon in terms of like when you think about innovation or launches, certainly in some of the key categories here, electricals, beauty, more premium beauty, fashion increasingly. I think what it gives you is it allows those brands a great platform for innovation launch. And, there aren't that many options that can offer that kind of level of real estate and in a way that feels, really trusted and protected. So I think, designing that kind of inventory is really, it's a real privilege. It's also great fun. And I think it allows the brands to bring, the full power of the innovations to life. And again, just seeing, Samsung on the entrance is a great example, this incredible new Hoover's an amazing solution. So just, I think, creating the platform, the canvas for this big innovation to come to life is great.
Was there something that you were particularly specific about during the briefing of how can we make this experience premium that you had in mind for these touch points?
For me, the biggest bit was making sure that whatever we did really fitted into the environment.
Yeah.
What we don't want to do is just slap a big touch point on the side of a wall and it to look really foreign in the space. All has to look like it gels. And I think there's this real thing that you talked about earlier around the decompression. Our customers, we want them to come into the space and just feel really safe, really thought about, really looked after. And there's an example we always use about thinking about a truly connected store is actually a customer's moving around it and doing different things. So you might get someone who comes into the store, they're super flustered, they've been invited to a wedding in 2 weeks' time, they don't know anyone going, they're going with their new boyfriend or whatever, and they're instantly in store.
Sounds like fun.
Exactly. So you're really for this sort of high pressure. You built up this massive thing in your head. You walk into, you trust John Lewis. You know they've got all these great brands that they can buy his product for. Then you walk in and someone sprays some perfume in your face. Then you get some huge light from a digital screen over here, and then someone's trying to flog you something over there. That's not what you want. What you want is to come into a safe space where it's cool, it's calm. You can go to someone really helpful who's going to help you out, and you're going to leave feeling like you had the best experience and you're ready for whatever comes next. That's what you need to do. And our media and our digital touch points and anything we do in store, whether it's sampling, whether it's pop-ups, whether it's a new digital screen network, all of that has to fit within that. So I think that's the idea when we talk about premiumization. It's not just that, it's about someone's mindset over the course of the 1, 3, 4 hours that they're with us.
So when you think about the screens and the customer journey, it's the touch points. They don't have to be the main character, but they have to kind of accompany and maybe ensemble that experience. Is that the way that you see it?
Yeah, totally. So I think one of the things is if you ask shoppers afterwards, how consciously did they process? It's not perhaps as people might imagine. You're not watching something and then there's an immediate, I watched the whole video like a narrative. That's not really how people process this type of information. But what we see consistently in all the research and all the kind of data studies we've seen is that they're very effective at helping people to basically make heuristic shortcuts in their brain, the way they process all the choice that they're presented with. So for us, I think it's about understanding the role of the touchpoint, the role of the content and the delivery of that, and then designing it to be well considered, and ultimately to be quite kind of empathetic. I think that's one of the big things is how do we make it not feel like you're screaming, you're shouting. It's there's obviously no volume of sound, which is a really important point. It's it needs to feel a balance of calm, but also allowing the brand and the kind of key elements of the brand. So whether it's the distinctive brand assets or the innovation or whatever particular parts to play a role, but it feels balanced. The only thing I was just going to mention is around on value, and I know we've talked a bit about premiumization. I think one of the bits is also perhaps I potentially underrepresented so far is that there is important airtime that's given to the retailer, and I think even looking that there's so much that's represented in value that's brought to life in all our touch points. So again, I think we're not premiumizing the store. I think what we're creating premium inventory, but I think it's also giving a platform for the John Lewis brand to represent what value means to it and how it articulates brand to its shoppers. So
value, which is not the same as price. Let's clarify that.
Yeah, exactly. Value's got multiple dimensions, and we've all got our own interpretations of it. But I think there's some important, really important, confidence that John Lewis gives to its shoppers. Whether it's obviously never knowingly undersold is clearly a great example. But even in the Black Friday executions, the way in which it represents. So I think for us, I think it's just making sure that this is creating great inventory, but it's also doing a really important job for the brand and making the John Lewis brand work really hard in the key moments that it wants to speak to.
Other than being in a John Lewis store, which is, you have the demographic and you're close to the point of purchase, etc. Why do you think that the touch points or the screens are particularly attractive for brands to invest in? Is it still relatively because I heard Gary Vee the other day saying on a podcast that he felt like retail media was still underpriced?
I think, to be honest with you, we're still trying to work it out a little bit. We're creating something ourselves, and I think there's this idea of we're building what we think is the right thing. And I think we're building something that we are assuming suppliers are going to want and buy. And it's the idea as well that you can't be too mental and radical and too bold, because when you're going to a shopper marketer who's got their trading budget or their shop marketing spend, and they go, I don't understand what you're selling, I'm not going to buy it. Or I don't know how this is going to fit into everything else. I don't know how to explain this to my boss, why I spent the money on that. It sounds more expensive than that thing over there. It sounds a bit more different. I don't understand the KPIs of this bit of inventory that you're pushing at me. So I think there's an element of when you're building all this stuff is thinking about, right, well, we want to do something unique for John Lewis. We want to do something that's really cool that other people aren't going to do. That's also why we think people will buy into it, because they are buying into it because John Lewis is doing something cool and new. But it also needs to be something that they understand, that a brand who's buying into our retail media network, they understand what they're buying, they understand what it's pushing, and they understand how it fits into the other things they're doing around the nation as well. So a great thing is we're in Bluewater, we've got a shopping centre, we've got some highest footfall in the country out there. We've got these beautiful digital screens which are phasing out into the shopping centre. So there's a bit of a digital out-of-home element kind of coming into that, which is not digital out-of-home, it belongs to us, but there's a cinema here, the shopping centre is open till I think about 1 a.m. So you've got that constant footfall traffic going on. So it's actually thinking about how are we helping brands go a bit further with their pretty traditional shopper marketing budgets by offering them something a bit new, which is still slightly within their world.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a change of paradigm of like retail media to be seen as like, oh, you just see this brand show up here just to buy them that day, to like being more part of like what we're saying, that storytelling and part of like the general brand assets, no? And I think there's a big opportunity there, no?
Totally. We see a huge opportunity for brands to have ability to elevate the way they execute.
Well, you see it across the board. I mean, because you must be a big proponent of like the power of this, like not only like as a bottom of the funnel, but as a way of building brands. I mean,
totally.
What type of advice are you giving brands, or how do you like overcome these objections that Georgia was talking about?
So I think firstly being really grounded in articulating really well and accurately the value of the audience, what makes it truly unique, and in John Lewis that is actually relatively easy to do because it's a pretty powerful asset in terms of the footfall, the value of the audience, and these really incredibly important moments in the calendar, the seasonal year that John Lewis plays. So I think allowing to have a real moment of cut through. But I think then it's also about how we help brands maximize their assets in the full impact. Again, designing assets for these particular touch points is all included in the service delivery. So we find ways of really making sure that it feels really accessible. We take any friction out of the process of engaging and buying. But ultimately what we want to do is we want to allow the beauties of these incredible brands to be maximized and for them to feel like they are truly represented in the way that they'd want to be. Obviously they have full approval of all the content and sign off, but we help them understand the best way to showcase what they want to talk about, understanding the reality of how audiences really engage and process this. So I think there is a journey of it helping educate and helping people to understand it, but I think what we're seeing consistently is the power of this to make a big impact on the choices that shoppers make. And again, there's a huge amount of research in the industry at large around actually the power of digital to help influence is really powerful. Consistently outperforms analog or printed. Understanding how you find the right balance of all the inventory is really important. But actually, we're seeing consistent cut through from a sales productivity point of view.
And what do you tell like brands when they tell you like, oh yeah, like how is this gonna get me more sales, or why is this worth it? I don't know if there's any like mantra that you have for brands to overcome these challenges.
That's a good thing we should think about. But I think a lot we try and anchor ourselves a lot in like really understanding how shopper psychology, how they process information. And again, I think what's important here is we talk about empathy a lot. People, when they're in these environments, they're being presented with a huge array of products. They're trying to navigate, they're trying to understand where they go. And what we understand in that context is actually the way that the brain processes that amount of information is susceptible to influence. And I think we're not trying to say that in a negative way. It's about helping.
They're in a shopping mode, no?
Exactly, and that's why there's naturally a bit of a default traditionally, not in department store, but grocery, for example, to the default to bigger brands. That's generally the pattern because these brands, they're better known, the traditional mental availability kind of occur. So what we're trying to do is just help other brands, compete in their own way and give a real, as I say, a canvas for these distinctive assets to come to life.
And what brands are you seeing I mean, this is still very early stages. I mean, how many weeks have you been live?
3?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of brands have jumped on the bandwagon and like, yeah, what's their feedback or?
It's been a really nice mix, actually. I think traditionally, retail's, we have a funny one because in our team, we've got me that does in-store, we've got other members of the team that do on-site, off-site, and all that kind of thing. So I think we always sort of constantly question each other on what are you doing and how are you different things. And I think retail in-store is a bit of a tricky one because you've got 4 walls and there's only so much you can do within your 4 walls. You're very much stuck with sort of where you are in store.
Yeah.
So if you are baby clothes, if you're Lego or something like that, you are very much stuck in the toy department. And actually what brands are really trying to do at the moment is get out of their little category and get out of the left-hand corner on the second floor. And what they want to do is sort of inspire other areas. And you're also seeing brands really innovate within their own products. So a great example would be Shark. So obviously Shark Ninja they've got their air fryers. They also now have red light masks. They've also moving into lots of different kind of like sporting activities and things like that. So, or if you're a Whoop watch, technically you sit on the tech brand, tech floor, but you probably want to sit in maybe a fashion area and sort of think about that. So what we're trying to do now is thinking about how can we help brands educate everyone around the store and what they're doing and where they're going. And because of that, we're seeing all types of brands buy into it.
Oh, interesting. And how are you like seeing these touch points in store combining with the rest of your retail media offering? Like also in a brand, when you're speaking with a brand about like John Lewis partnership?
For John Lewis specifically, it's sometimes a bit of a tricky one because you have brands who are particularly trying to get headroom in an area. So it might be headroom growth online or it might be in store. So it's really hard to sort of talk to a brand and go, actually, you know what, holistically, this is what you should be planning across your media campaign of the year. And actually you get brands who go, you know what, I've got sort of 30,000, I'm going to plug it all over here and hope for the best. When actually there's a whole world of things you could be doing to influence across our different media and online and in store. And shoppers really do behave differently. So I know everyone's sort of heard about the sofa to store analogy of you sit on your sofa, you're scrolling through an app, then you come in store. Because actually, especially John Lewis, if you're buying a $4,000 sofa or you're buying a new pair of headphones which are £300, something like that, you probably want to go and look at them and sit on it and try it on. But then actually,
I definitely do.
Yeah, but then you might not want to do it. And actually, in store now, we have 12 ways to pay. Because quite often people come in, they'll spend an hour with a consultant trying different stuff, and then they'll go, I'm just going to go home and just see if I can get it cheaper somewhere else. Or I don't want to carry this home. I'm going to go home and order it online. So there's lots of different ways where you can connect through media, that customer mindset, through the different periods of their day. And it might even be the case that I always love the analogy of we obviously work with Waitrose as well. So actually you could be on your commute into work and you're listening to the Dish podcast, best podcast in the world. And then you go on the bus and you go past a John Lewis store and you see some branded windows, which have been sponsored, and you've got David Beckham in his pants talking about Hugo Boss or whatever. And then on your lunch break, you pop into a Waitrose to get a meal deal. In there, you can also pick up a magazine because you've got dinner party that weekend and you want to get some inspiration. You go home, on the way home, you pop into that John Lewis you went past in the area and you pick up some mascara. You see a lovely digital screen for some lovely new, I don't know.
It's a bit like understanding retail as a bit of an ecosystem, no?
Yeah, and I
like
think
the same that phone companies do.
Yeah, and I think that's what you want to really push, but it's really hard when you are talking about media to talk to a shop marketer who just wants a page in a magazine because they understand it, that's where they want their investment to go.
What about the CMOs?
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of work we need to be doing to get to them. And I think actually we did the John Lewis supplier conference in the summer. We had lots of CMOs there, we had lots of MDs there and things, and look, we had a sort of a retail media stand. So if you want to know more about it, come to us. And the amount of MDs who came to us saying, actually, I know that my marketing teams are asking for budget to spend in this area, but I don't really know to say yes or no to it because retail media is still quite new to me. And so we're having quite a lot of calls with CMOs or MDs to really just educate them on actually this is what we're doing and this is why it's sort of growing in other areas. So I think there's always like that, there isn't it, every industry. You've got gaps of knowledge.
CMOs also, because there's a bit of a thing of like, oh yeah, like the retailers selling the retail media, they should be going to CMOs and selling to them. But I think that's also a responsibility of CMOs, of like, you have to wake up to this reality, no? And then I think that they sometimes feel like it's not sexy enough or not strategic enough, but I don't think that's necessarily. I think it's not strategic to ignore it.
I think it's changing, and actually what we're really seeing now is agencies coming to us. So M Group, you've got the Havas, all those guys are coming to us and saying, so how can we sell on the behalf of our brands in your store? Because we know that there's a CMO who wants a national campaign and they're starting to ask about this. and we sort of go, well, we don't really work with agencies right now.
Starting to, and retail media has been in the boom for 3 years. So.
I think because for a long time it was all really sort of tied up with trade deals, and I think there was a bit of a thing for brands going, well, you're already asking us to spend money on promotion, and then you want us to get involved in this deal, and then you also want to help us refurb your stores. And so I think it's only been really in the last few years that retail media starts to stand on its own 2 feet. And really kind of be its own business unit with its own KPIs, and actually talking to a CMO about actually this is what you can do across that journey. Like that analogy I said about, on the commute, you listen to this podcast, you then buy something in the evening. That conversation is still quite new, I think.
The Dish podcast, by the way, is the podcast that somebody from Waitrose was telling me recently. That is the podcast that you have that is about like a famous person talking about how they cook. Or?
Yeah, so it's with Angela Hartnett and Nick
promote your
Grimshaw.
podcast, okay.
Oh, we don't need to, it's brilliant.
No, it's fine,
it wins awards all the time. It's on series 8 now, I think, at the moment. But yes, Angela Hartnett, Nick Grimshaw, doing a great podcast. They have some huge guests come on, and the guests sort of talk about their love of food and their journey, and it's a bit of fun.
Great. And yeah, I've heard it's uber successful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I have to learn a few things from there. You know that a lot of, we are called the FMCG guys, so a lot of our audience comes from FMCG, which is what you sell at Waitrose, and I know that you sell at FMCG. Well, how do you see the potential of this more cinematic experience also in an FMCG environment?
It's definitely got kind of transferable elements, undoubtedly, and I think creating these showstopper type moments is definitely, it's got real potential. We're sensitive to the way that we think about any channel, because and I've already mentioned it, like making sure that it feels well considered, coherent into the environment, that it's using the physical asset in the way that it really should be maximised. But I think what FMCG does allow is probably a little bit more immediate connection to combinations of merchandise, often that don't sit in the same category. So, recipes is a great example. How do you bring the power of, multiple food categories together in a way that, creates a moment or an occasion, and executing incredibly well against that? I think that there's some real opportunity to push the agenda. But I would also say, I was client side for 10 years. I think the significance of in-store in FMCG is obviously enormous. It's in probably the high 80% of the total kind of category sales. What we're seeing is actually the importance and the opportunity to create, industry-leading inventory that can influence at that scale. Is the potential of that is enormous. And translating traditional point of sale, printed point of sale into digitized solutions, or as part of the evolution, we're talking some significant opportunity from influencing sales, productivity, brand building, helping brands come to life.
Like make supermarkets also more experiential, no?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it feels also part of this, what we're seeing undoubtedly happening is like a broader digitization of physical stores generally. So I think it will, lots of digitization naturally sits on more operational focus elements, whether it's shelf edge labels or other inventory management, but I think it's about understanding how this is going to feel part of a broader evolution of what digital stores look like in the future. So yeah, I think it's a great point, great opportunity.
Thoughts?
I agree with it all.
Fantastic. So we have this famous last question, which is a bit of a change of topic, but we ask all our guests, so we couldn't make an exception here, which is a career question. You know that my background is at headhunting, so a bit of careers I love. If you went back to the beginning of your career when you were starting, what would be that one piece of advice you would give yourselves?
Yeah, there are many, definitely. I think probably being a bit more considered about pace. I was obsessed when I started about speed of progression.
Why do I get this from so many Londoners all the time?
What I probably massively misunderstood was actually sometimes there are moments when your career can move really quickly, and other times actually it can feel a bit slower, but the slower is often you're picking something up that you may not immediately understand or catch the value of, that's going to probably have a bigger long-term value. So yeah, probably being a bit more patient, a bit more balanced.
Yeah, and I think mine would be sort of just talk to loads of people, because I think you can sit in a role for a year or 2 years, but I think if you're working for a company where there's lots of different things going on, ask people to go for coffee. People tend to love to talk about themselves. So I think actually reaching out and saying, hey, I don't really know your area of the business, can I go for a coffee? I think that really starts to help shape what it is that you want to do. And it doesn't mean you have to move around the business, move company to do things. You can, one of the great things about, I think, lots of companies nowadays, there's lots of different departments you can have a go at. And I think have a go at so many you can until you find your niche.
I would say that's kind of a career guarantee, no? Because like everything is changing so quick that if you can understand other departments, you kind of have a guarantee that you can land somewhere.
Yeah, I think lots of people think though this is my job and I'm siloed and I'm just going to sit in it because I'm going to be really good at this, without realising actually the things to the left and right of you could be twice as interesting.
Well, and CEOs are generalists, right, at the end of the day. Guys, this has been fantastic. Thanks for accompanying
Thank you
me
for having us.
in this first podcast in the store.
Thank you, Daniel.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great one.